All right, continuing the tax strike conversation with me, a tax attorney. My comment section is always like, taxes aren't real, show me the law. It's the 16th Amendment, and then Title 26, and then you go from there. And there's lots of case law after that, and that is all I need to say. I told you what they are. Those are the statutes. You start there. Second of all, I get a lot of tags of people tagging me in creators or firms that say that they can help you legally exit the taxation system, right? Or that you legally don't have to pay taxes. You do, okay? And if you need any further proof of that, what I like to do when I use my critical thinking skills or something that sounds too good to be true is I was like, let me just look up any one of these groups. So I look up the group and they're advertising here on TikTok and I find the founder, right? So always start with the founder. And then I was like, just do a public record search. And lo and behold, I found a bunch of taxes assessed against him. So, and I will show you a legal proceeding that is recent. So this person's strategy wasn't a legal way to exit the taxation system. It was a delay tactic, which is don't file, don't pay, wait until the government files for you, and then contest them in tax court, drag out that process, then file an appeal, and all of that. Yes, it will take a very long time. And eventually they will assess you tax. Now, the government can speed up the process and do civil and criminal enforcement. It looks like in this case, they're doing a lot of civil enforcement, but let's take a look at the proceedings, okay? I'm just gonna do the most recent one because it would take me forever to start all the way back in 2014 when I believe this is when this all started. Right, I am an attorney, and so I do think people deserve their right to privacy, even though this is public record. I redacted the defendants' names. The case number is there. I'm not gonna redact that. What this is a district court action where these defendants have already been assessed tax liability in the United States tax court. They filed an appeal. They lost that appeal, and now the government is suing them in district court to take that civil judgment. Normally, the IRS has 10 years from the assessment date to collect. However, they can sue a taxpayer in district court and obtain a judgment, and that judgment lien is good for 20 years. So this is how you can have a very long statute on collections, is do these district court actions. So this is the beginning of that proceeding. The defendants in this case owned a business that promotes that they can help Americans legally not pay taxes, and as such, took their own tax advice. They're below. That's all I have to say on that. Again, this company promotes that they have not filed or paid taxes since 1993. So again, when you don't file and you don't pay, the government can prepare returns for you based on the information that they have, which is called substitute for return. And before they assess the tax, they send you what's called a notice of deficiency, which appears what the government did between 2001 and 2006. Years in 2008. So in this case, you can see they didn't file, they got a notice of deficiency in 2014. The defendants participated in that. They lost the tax court case and were assessed liability, then appealed it to the Ninth Circuit, and the Ninth Circuit affirmed the tax court's decision. Therefore, the defendants lost again. So these are the amounts of the income tax liability that were assessed against these defendants, and these assessments took place in 2015 as the original assessment date. Here's a continuation of the taxes assessed, interest and penalties that accrue. So interest and penalties date back to the due date of the return, regardless of whether or not you file. If the government does it for you, they will go back and assess the interest and penalties that should be calculated from the time the original tax return was due and the payment was due. So all I'm trying to do here is tell you to be careful, right? Don't take advice from people that are not licensed attorneys. Attorneys aren't out to get people or scare people and to pull one over on you. I'm a tax attorney. If people are filing and paying their taxes and complying with the tax laws, I actually wouldn't have a job. So people are always in my comments like, oh, she's trying to get us, to comply with the tax laws. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't have any clients if people did. I actually defend people who don't follow the laws. I help them get out of trouble. And people are like, well, what would she do if we didn't have it? Anything else, I would roller skate, I would do art, I would hang out with my kids. But I'm passionate about helping people that are in trouble And I think a lot of taxpayers get there because they had unfortunate circumstances, a death of a family member, a business gone wrong, a divorce, something in their life, right, that caused them to have a tax issue. And then there's other people that intentionally do it. And that is more difficult to defend, and the government doesn't have a lot of sympathy. And the laws are the laws. If you don't like the laws, Congress, that's where you got to go. And the problem with Congress is we've got money in our elections, and the money in our elections help pick candidates, and those candidates write laws that are in favor of their donors and not of the American people. So until we get money out of politics, that's where you got to focus your energy. That's where you have to focus the change. You got to get money out of politics and legislators to write laws for the American people, to work for the American people again. That is how you're going to effectuate change. If you choose to go down this path, the only person you may harm is yourself financially, right? And then you're going to need somebody like me. And I, as much as I love the community out here on TikTok, I can't represent everybody. And one other point is people think, well, I haven't been caught yet. Yes, this person dragged this out for 10 years or longer. And in the past, I would say it was easier to pull one over on the government because the government didn't have the resources. They didn't have the people. But they are building AI and algorithms and getting data from more and more sources. And it's going to be easier and easier and easier because they're planning on doing that work without humans. They're doing it with automations and algorithms and data. And so it's actually easier for the government to go after more people and to automate the system because a computer can look, take the third-party data, see that no return was filed, and push out a notice of deficiency. And then the taxpayer has to participate. And participating in that legal process to drag it out is often expensive unless you represent yourself. But even if you represent yourself, you'll probably lose. So these are all things to consider, right? And I understand you're frustrated. We all are. But until we all get together and realize it's all of us against a small amount of them, and that we can effectuate change by getting money out of politics and participating in our elections and getting Congress to write laws, then the favor of all of us, nothing's going to change. And I just don't want you to financially hurt yourself in the process of doing all that. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.